This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. My name is Alan Katz.
And I'm Gil Adler.
Today we have a guest named Terry Castle. And Terry, her dad was a filmmaker named William Castle. And perhaps some of you know who that is.
I'm William Castle.
I suspect if you're tuning in, you probably do. But if you don't, we're going to introduce you to an amazing person, an amazing filmmaker from the point of view of his daughter, Terry. But the reason that we're even talking about William Castle is because Gil made a couple of movies. They were remakes of some of Castle's great movies. And how is it that you came to make those movies, Gil?
Well, Joel had done a partnership with Bob Zemeckis, and they created a company called Dark Castle.
All right.
And they invited me actually to join them in a smaller way to make some.
They weren't offering you a partnership.
No, they weren't offering me an equal partnership. That's what they weren't offering.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting relationship, and one of the first things that they did was they had access to and got the rights for William Castle Library. At the same time, Dick Donner was getting the rights for all the Hammer movies, the English company Hammer.
Oh.
And so there was a bit of a competition going on between Dick and Joel in those days. But
what?
Yeah.
Oh,
Hard to believe, right? But we went ahead and we did a remake of House on Haunted Hill.
That was the first one?
That was the first one. And then the second one, we did 13 Ghosts.
Right.
And my favorite was the Tingler, which I desperately wanted to make. And that was going to be the third one, which we never got there. We just never got to doing it.
Why did you? Boy, we have a way of dying after the second film project. What the fuck?
Yeah, no, I don't think they liked it as much as I did, and also there were some issues with how do you present some of the physical stuff in a contemporary way that's not laughable. I mean, some of the stuff in the original one, as we'll discuss with Terry, is some of the stuff where I recognize something as a real physical something, and they're saying it's scary and it's inside the body.
The audience had evolved considerably since William Castle made his movies in the
I would hope so.
Late 50s, early 60s. Well, the audience became way more sophisticated.
Oh yeah, this is like what, 50 years later, 40 years later.
Yeah.
And it was a very different world, and it was a different. But the basic tenet of the stories were good ones. Sometimes they got a little off the effects and how he presented some things were like a little wacky and a little dopey. But the audience accepted it and liked it. We couldn't do that today. We couldn't do that when we made those movies.
And Castle was especially famous for. The movies probably paled in comparison to the promotional
gimmicks
approach.
The gimmicks of sale, yeah. The gimmicks of sale were unbelievable.
Just a genius.
He would make chairs vibrate.
Yeah.
And he would say no, and they would say, "Well, how many chairs?" And we can do a few. And they go, "No, all the chairs. I want them all to vibrate." And the studios and the people who owned the theaters would say, "Well, wait a minute. You want all the? You can't have all the." How are you going to make all the chairs vibrate? That's what I want. With House on Haunted Hill, he had a ghost,
a skeleton
on a wire.
Yeah. Was it a ghost or a skeleton?
It was a skeleton.
Skeleton, okay.
And it would come down on a wire. I mean, there was no physicality to this in terms of how did they do that? It was like right in front of you.
It was not a complicated joke,
but it was funny, and also if you hadn't seen it, it was scary. I mean, people were frightened, and that's really what he wanted to do. So he brought a degree of showmanship that no one had done before in scary horror movies. Yeah. And I don't think anyone has done as well since.
He brought real theatricality into the auditorium where the movie.
Yeah, and his background was in the theater.
Yeah,
right. And so he brought that. I mean, in some ways, my background in the theater brought me to a place where I started making movies, and then the theatricality of the theater, I think, is sort of instilled in me in terms of how do you make a movie, and what's important about making that movie, what's important about what you tell the audience and when you tell it to them and how you tell it to them, and what are you trying to, what kind of reaction are you trying to generate from them as you're portraying and telling them the story.
Yeah. The theater also, because it's live, there's no margin for error. And
No.
so you have to learn a whole other bunch of skills just to, not fall off that high wire. Oh,
and one of them is to keep going. No matter what happens, you got to keep going.
Absolutely. These are important lessons at the end of the day. Yeah, the show must go on.
Right.
And this show must go on. In fact, let's bring in Terry.
Let's bring in Terry. She's fantastic.
You know what? I am what I am.
Aren't we all?
Exactly.
It's funny, the timing of this conversation with you is interesting to me personally. We will get to Rosemary's Baby. We will of course we will get to Rosemary's Baby. But pardon?
Do we have to? No, I'm kidding. Go on.
Do we have to? Well, we'll certainly touch on it.
Okay. I'm just afraid of that movie. But anyway, go on.
No worries.
It's fine.
We'll take that under advisement. My son just turned 24 yesterday, and he was born in Vancouver. I was doing a show called The Outer Limits for Showtime. And the night that my wife went into labor, we were
Don't
watching.
tell me he had Rosemary's Baby story.
We were watching that movie.
Fuck.
And we watched.
Wife, I actually had a dream the night I went into labor about Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, that's so funny.
No, it's not. And your poor wife, tell her I am so sorry.
Oh, no. But, being the people that we are, we watched it all the way through to the ending and enjoyed. Of course, it was not the first time we'd seen the movie. So,
right.
We knew exactly what we were watching and what we were doing as my wife was in labor. It just seemed so poetic in a perverse way. But this is what we all do. This is who we all are. We're not like other people.
No, we're not. And that, of course, we're not. And I literally did have a Rosemary dream.
Oh my goodness.
Before I gave birth. And it wasn't good. It wasn't a good dream. So that, it was creepy. My doctor was not who I thought she was.
Did he advise like his father?
Exactly.
And speaking of
this is real. This isn't a dream. Sorry, go on.
Speaking of eyes like her father,
I have eyes like my father.
That was my question. Do you have eyes like your father? Cool.
I look exactly like him.
Wow. And
when people would comment when we'd walk down the street, they would like, "Oh my God, you look so much like your father." Wow. He taught me in William Castle form to kiss my hand because I was now looking like him, and I should be so lucky.
What a remarkable! God, there's something Horatio Alger-like about your dad.
Can I just tell you the best part about Dad?
Yeah.
Nicest man in the world.
So it seems.
Joel Silver.
So is who?
Joel Silver, the opposite.
Well, it's funny, and we will come to this. I felt tremendous. I related to your dad in a lot of ways. He had an odd relationship with Harry Cohn, that Gil and I have.
Right.
To Joel Silver, there's a monster that we have to deal with and survive.
But Dad respected him.
Yeah, but again, we're jumping all over the place, and in order to get to be that person, your dad, the first 10 years of his life, there were two very big hardships that, under normal circumstances, might not produce a person quite like your dad. he lost was it his mom at 9 and his dad at 10.
11, yeah.
What
He was orphaned.
what
And then
happened?
he lived, his mother died of pneumonia, and then his father died of a heart attack. And he had an older sister who he like sort of slept on her couch for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But he basically raised himself.
And where was that? Where were they?
He was in New York.
They lived in New York.
Yeah, up in Riverside Drive.
Oh, wow.
The story really is quite amazing.
Right?
He was it 9? He sees Dracula. Is it 9 years old? He sees Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
In a production of Dracula, a live version of Dracula, and he has that moment that most of us have, where you suddenly go, "Gadoing! I know why I'm here. I know what I have to do, and I certainly know what I want to do." And then your dad went back and watched that show again and again and again.
Yes, he did.
How many times did he actually watch Bela Lugosi?
I mean, he probably snuck in, a dozen times.
Wow. Well, yeah, sure. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
But then finally, and again, it's perseverance. It's God.
Yeah, and I think there was a combination of the captured the imagination.
Sure.
But then I think there was also, after he lost his family, the feeling of family, on whether it was theatrical or plays or Broadway or movie sets or, at Columbia. I think it was the feeling of family that he gravitated towards so much too.
Yeah. He's still, like I said, he persisted, and he eventually he meets Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
And not only does he meet Bela Lugosi, but Mr. Lugosi takes your dad very much under his wing, but under his cape.
He does. He does. And I don't know if that's where the horror, that's where he was bitten.
There you go. Once it starts, there's no stopping.
I told you, Alan, it runs in the family. I told you.
But that started his brain and his desire to work actually in theater, but to make horror films was the him seeing the lines for Diabolique, the French film, and how successful it was. That's when he actually took the first step to mortgage our house, buy a book called Macabre, and make it into a movie.
Your dad does say in his book that seeing Bela Lugosi was the first moment when it occurred to him that he wanted to scare the crap out of people.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Now, how
I think that a little bit with a grain of salt.
Oh, yes.
But let's go with it.
Mario,
my dad's daughter. Yes, that was the moment he knew he had to make horror films, and he knew somewhere along the line he'd come up to the devil, and the devil would have.
Why are you stepping on the man's myth?
Never. I would never do that.
It's but still his persistence and his, like I said, Bela Lugosi.
I will tell you one thing.
Sure.
He wouldn't buy this notion of how not to make a movie. Like, people would come to him, I might be jumping around here, and he would say, I want to be a producer. And he'd reach deep into his pocket and he'd go like this, and he'd go, puff, you're a producer, now go produce.
Oh, it's absolutely true. As Gil can attest, as I can attest, it is you have to go do.
Yeah.
It is. That's the magic sauce.
It's the magic sauce.
The secret sauce is going and doing, and you succeed sometimes and you fail other times.
And you have to have chutzpah or balls or whatever you want to call it.
Indeed. Well,
that's a hard lesson. That's a really hard lesson to learn,
It's a really hard lesson and if you don't have it, you don't have it.
Yeah, I asked Joe Papp and Bernie Gersten for a job, and Jules Irving when he was running Lincoln Center, almost every day when I was living in New York. Give me a job. I'll do anything. Just give me a job. I just want to work at Lincoln Center. I just want to work at the Shakespeare Festival. And Joe, took me aside one day and said, I can't give you a job here. You'll frighten everybody away because you'll take over everyone's job, and you're going to be a producer. You just sound like a producer. You're going to be a producer. So produce something. And I would walk out of the room almost in tears, feeling like, Joe, if you don't like me, just say you hate me and throw me out. Don't give me. And then when I produced a play that was successful, and Joe and Bernie were there in the audience and came up to me afterwards, it said, "Now you're a producer." Then I understood what they were talking about.
Talking about, yeah, but it is a really hard thing.
It is really hard.
And I think, do you think it's harder today?
I think it's much harder well, I think in a lot of ways it's much harder.
I do.
And in some ways it's easier. I think the social media aspect of it makes it much more accessible to a wide audience, and people seeing your material in a much greater way and a much more convenient way. I mean, when we were at it, doing it, 20 years ago or more, you had an off-Broadway play, you had a workshop someplace, but people had to be there. You didn't have this media advantage where you could get, 5 million, 2 million, half a million people watching it all at one time.
Right.
So that makes it much more accessible. And I think the people who are looking to finance those kinds of projects are much more into looking at that arena now than they ever have before. So it's a lot easier in a way, but I think the competition is much greater.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to drag us back to Bela Lugosi.
Lugosi, okay.
Because
I think it's the rain that's bringing out Bela.
But because it really has to do with, but the stage, because I think your dad took a lot away from his experience with the stage.
He did. Everything
at 15 years old, he drops out of school.
Yeah.
And he becomes a theater creature. In fact, his teenage years are spent entirely on Broadway. He's building sets. He's working backstage. Sometimes he's even
anything. He would do anything.
Yeah.
And we're also talking about a time where there was no money, and he was living in Greenwich Village, and not being able to pay his rent, and had this amazing landlord, and he would do it. He was hungry. I mean, he was literally hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing too.
Oh, hey, it is the greatest motivator going.
Right.
But then he also combined that hunger,
right,
the ambition with, now he has come of age really in the theater, and his sense of the spectacle is quite theatrical.
Right.
And he's come really, he has now been, his mentor is a very melodramatic performer.
Character, right.
And who really, it's all about shtick.
Yeah, that combined with hunger and fear is what made Dad the showman that he became. And
so his path to become the showman, because I want our audience to appreciate how you get to be a William Castle. Coming from where you come from, but then so he spends a lot.
You read his book, right?
I've seen portions of it. It's an amazing story. It's simply amazing. But I'm more
documentary.
But there's stuff that he has left out, which has to do with the personal.
Okay.
Which is really where, that's really where I want to plot, I want to establish certain things.
Did you ever hear the story where he took over a Connecticut theater?
He gets a hold of Orson Welles' telephone number.
Well, and Orson says, you could have this theater,
yes,
play, et cetera,
right.
And there's many, Dad tells the story in great detail, but he had a German actress named Ellen Schwanke, who Hitler sent her a note, said, you need to come back to perform, and my dad got hold of this, and then he used that as an opportunity. He was like, okay, I'm going to be the man who says no to Hitler. And then he planted all these stories everywhere. And again, the theatrical in him, the spectacle person in him which he learned,
Mm.
combined with the fact that he hadn't sold a ticket, and it was going to be a flop. It was like the hottest summer in Connecticut. Nobody had bought a ticket, and he was going to be a failure, which was so motivating to him.
Sure.
Made him go out in the middle of the night with spray paint. He was a Jew.
Yes.
And with his spray paint swastikas all over the box office and topple it and break the glass and, say all these anti-Jewish slogans, so that the governor got involved, and it was a huge hit. And everybody came. They came in their minx coats.
Suddenly he had all right. He had created an artificial event around the movie where suddenly there were people cared about the movie when previously they didn't care. It was rather audacious. I mean, it worked. The play apparently was a huge success.
Huge success, yeah. And that's how he learned. So what is that? So that's learning what he learned from the theater and taking that idea, right? And then McCall, his first movie he had put money in, he had put
let's not get him quite there yet, because he hasn't gone through the Harry Cohn machine yet.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot that he takes away from the Harry Cohn experience that also, he arrives, he's, how to be a movie maker. And it doesn't take him very long from the time that he arrives at Columbia to suddenly Harry Cohn has him directing movies.
Like many movies, like all sorts of movies, like, this movie in 5 days, this movie in 20 days. It was just like,
what was it? I just saw the budget for one of them was $50,000. Well, Hedda Hopper said it was $75,000. Your dad said it was $50,000, and the schedule was 7 days. Was it something to call it? I Met a Stranger.
Was it Strangers Marry? That was one of his first ones. Was when Strangers Marry.
Yeah. It was just ridiculous schedules and ridiculous budgets, and
he was actually quite a good director. He was a really solid director.
It's funny. I saw a little bit of Masters from Kansas.
Okay, I've never seen that.
Masterson from Kansas, about Bat Masterson. It's a Western, and it's all right. The script is, I would say, it's rather direct. It's not bad. It's not subtle, let's say, but really it's the characterizations are all bang on. The actors are actually quite good. It's actually really well made in its fundamentals. Absolutely.
Right?
Positively. Your dad was a terrific nuts and bolts director. He absolutely positively, he could direct anything.
Yeah. And he loved it. And he loved the people, and he wanted, he loved the people, and he loved he loved the family again. He was orphaned. When you go on to a movie set, everybody there becomes your family for those 2 weeks, whatever it was. But there it was longer because
2 weeks.
Them, huh? No, but yeah, I know. But I mean, you work with the same people. I mean, I remember as a little girl walking onto movie sets with Dad, and everybody would be, hey Bill, like from the rafters, or you just, it was that was the relationships.
That makes such sense that a man who really his family was taken away from him found family in this world. And I'm sure the theater world was family, because that's the nature of the theater world. And certainly one of the most appealing things about being on a film set, if you're there for a length of time, is the bonding, the social experience of having this new family.
And he loved that.
I'm sure.
He loved that. And he loved the creative process, and he loved stories. I mean, it was, my entire life his nose was in a book, or tell me the story to anybody who would walk in the room.
Now, it's remarkable that your dad was one of the few people that Harry Cohn, one of the legendary monsters of Hollywood,
right?
That Harry Cohn liked your dad. Just to give the audience a sense of what a monster Harry Cohn was, when he died, and everyone in Hollywood showed up. It was Red Skelton was giving the eulogy, and Red Skelton said, this today is a demonstration of everything that Harry believes. If you put out something that people want, they will show up.
Interesting.
There was Harry Cohn dead, and everybody showed up.
Well, what my dad said, like in the later years, when studios began to become these corporations, he's like, I knew Harry Cohn, he was an asshole, but I knew his kind of assholiness. He understood it, he could deal with it. And I'm sure that's how you guys kind of felt. Like you felt like you could deal with it because you knew it and understood it. And I think that was Dad's relationship with Harry.
It seemed like with Harry Cohn, as our analog is Joel Silver. Mm-hmm. And we know for a fact
Harry didn't wear pajamas to work. That was maybe a little different.
Harry Cohn.
No, actually, it wasn't. Joel used to wear. I used to always say to him, he was wearing pajamas. He would say, "No, it's a very chic outfit I'm wearing." And I would say, "Okay, it's pajamas. It's very chic pajamas." And then, of course, we get into a fight.
Right, but I met him. He was wearing pajamas. Yeah.
Our first assistant director on Bordello of Blood was a guy named Lee Knipperberg, and Lee would refer to Joel when Joel would visit our set as the pajaminator. Well, I'm sorry, Lee was Canadian, so he called him the pajaminator.
Pajaminator. That's very funny. Yeah, that was intense. But we can get off the subject, but we'll go back there later, because I felt so sorry for Bill Malone on House on Haunted Hill. I didn't know what to do with myself.
But dealing with the Harry Cohns and the Joel Silvers is not everybody does that successfully.
Right.
Did your dad ever bring home some of the agita that Harry must have caused?
Yeah, it was. I was a little young, because I think Dad. I mean, because I was born after the Harry Cohn period, pretty much. So I don't remember him bringing that home. Gotcha. I mean, I have all these telegrams from when my mom and dad were traveling. It'd be like, needed on movie, stop, come home right away, stop. My dad would be like, been here one day, this is honeymoon, stop. Harry Cohn says, get back here, you SOB, stop. And Dad would be like, okay, stop.
Yeah.
Salt of the earth. Yeah.
I have a couple of similar situations. Really, it's another time.
Right, Gil?
This town attracts a certain kind of asshole. It just
right. But it was Charles Bluedorn who really scared the crap out of him.
Right.
Really?
You know who that is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Open Western.
Yeah, in the Rosemary's Baby days. I mean, he was scary.
Why? All right. What was scary to your dad about Bluedorn?
I don't know particularly, but he would be shaking in his. I mean, he was in the middle of making Rosemary's Baby. He'd be summoned to the, New York, to the top floor of, and Charles Bluedorn, who was this German, like was just an ass. I mean, he was just mean, and he was going to take away the and then there was Frank Sinatra involved, and then there's Mia Farrow, and they're over budget, and my dad hasn't, my dad made entire movies in the amount of time it took Polanski to do one scene, and it was just a lot.
Yeah.
So Dad had to stick up for Roman, and meanwhile, he's going crazy because it's like, oh my God, he just 400 takes. I would have been,
And where was Bob Evans in all this?
So he was in New York and Dad would have to either fly there, or they did some shooting, in New York, and he'd have to go up there and he'd have to meet with him, and he would be terrified. I mean, I literally remember him being I was really young. I always laughed. I'm like, I was 11 when I met Roman Polanski.
Did your dad ever feel, you might not know the answer to this, but, considering just the executives he'd have to deal with, maybe a little grateful that he wasn't directing the picture?
No. He loved how it came out, but he got very sick after that movie, and he never was able to like he was never able to make an A film. And for my dad, he died being a failure. He wasn't in the A class filmmakers, So there's that whole story, So yeah, no.
Well, all right. Alas, if we could only live to see how history treats us,
right.
I think he would have
I
been.
know he would have blown away.
He would have been thrilled to pieces, because really,
I mean, people are watching the Tingler. People are watching, all the originals, and they're loving the gimmicks, and they're laughing, and they're watching, Vincent Price take his first LSD trip, and it's so much fun. I mean,
so in 1958, that's when suddenly really the William Castle that the world really appreciates. Although there were some good movies before then. I mean, are there any? Or before we go into the William Castle Productions days, are there any of his
directorial
pictures that really deserve more love in your mind?
I love the Whistler series. I mean, I look at those, and technically, I think they were solid direct, for what it was. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to get past how much fun his later movies were. Right? I mean, it was just the sheer fun of going to the movies.
Sure. And all right, so he sees the ability.
And also, I was of age.
Right.
With his other ones, in the 40s and 50s, I don't remember that much, and I didn't see them when I was young, because you couldn't get them.
So your dad makes a cob. He mortgages your house to make a cob.
Yes, I was not. I don't even know if I was born yet.
Okay, but
might have been the year I was born. He says to my mom, we're going to mortgage the house, and we're going to get this $100,000, and then he makes the movie in 10 days or so, whatever it is, for $100,000, right?
Yeah.
And it's not that good. It's okay. It's not that scary. But
he has a couple of great gimmicks in mind.
Well, he wakes up in the middle of the night, he's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Nobody comes.
But it almost doesn't matter what the movie is. So he has the idea for the $1 million life insurance.
He wakes up in the middle of the night. He's like, no one's going to come. What am I going to do? And we had an uncle. I had an uncle that lived in England and worked for Lloyd's of London. He's like, insure moviegoers against death by fright.
Awesome.
If they die when they're seeing that film, they'll get $1 million. They'll get what was it, $1,000?
Yeah, $1,000.
Sure, we'll get $1,000. They lined up. They wanted to see. Oh God, this thing must be so scary. I mean, people are dying in the theaters and getting cash. It was odd, again, it was the showmanship from those days, like you said, from when he was a kid. But it was also out of fear. It's like, no one's going to come see my movie. What can I do to get people in?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But people against death by fright. And when that was such a success, he kept it going.
He was really way, way, way ahead of the curve. He understood branding.
He branded himself
such a huge way that I
mean, he would go to Youngstown, Ohio, and he would be there when the movie opened. He'd go everywhere with those movies, and he would open those movies, and he would get skeleton keys from wonderful people, and to these tiny towns as the movies opened.
When did the logo come about?
With the scar, I don't know exactly what year that happened. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
I mean, the man was.
I don't ever remember it not being there, so I don't know.
That's a rather interesting way for a person he's not an actor. He's a director and a producer, and he's got
I'm walking because
no worries. It's quite a remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, I even have. I'm sorry, I'm walking.
No worries. Oh, yes. The logo. Yeah.
My cocktail napkins that were his.
The walk.
Huh?
It was worth the walk.
Here, do you want to see something else that's really wild? Can you see this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a picture. It looks like Santa Claus,
Yeah.
and Santa Claus has a cigar. Is that your dad? Is Santa Claus from
No,
Bill?
who else could it be? You see, am I? There you go.
Uh, it's hard to read the words. You're going to have to fill in the blank.
Orville and family from Orson and
Oh,
him.
from Orson. Oh, good God. Hey, it's not everybody that has a Christmas card from Orson Welles.
And here's another one.
Oh my God. Oh, wow. This is awesome stuff. Oh, thank you so much for showing this to us. Multiple Christmas, hand-drawn Christmas cards
Isn't that funny?
from and by Orson
Yeah.
Welles.
I found those. I'm like, I'm framing those and putting them up.
Wow. Oh my God. What those must be worth. Oh my good Lord. Oh.
Who knows? I don't know. They're worth everything to me because it's.
Oh, they're fantastic. And you know,
I mean, look at War of the Worlds. I mean, that's also, I think, something that influenced Dad. I mean, how could it not?
you sent everyone into panic over a story that you
Right?
were producing,
Right?
a made-up story. That's the greatest publicity you could possibly want.
I do think that had a huge influence on Dad.
And of all the people to be influenced by,
Right.
It's
like all the confluences kind of like, yeah.
You know, and to a degree, it kind of reflects, you know, was it Oscar Wilde said it's better to be talked about than not talked about?
Right.
All publicity is good publicity. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's the same, but that is the impresario's way of thinking.
Right.
Whatever brings them in the door, who cares? You sold the ticket. Isn't that the bottom line? And
yeah, when I was a little girl, we would go to when Rosemary's Baby was playing. We would go to the movie theater on Westwood. It was played at I forgot the theater. Was it the Crest? It was on Westwood, right below Wilshire, I believe.
Sure.
And he would count like he would be 350 plus 350. But he was such a nice guy that after Rosemary's Baby played for a very long time, he went to the theater and he gave a tip to the popcorn guys and to the ticket guys because they were because they were family to him.
Wow.
Wild, huh?
The gimmicks were increasingly, well, they were genius. Each film had
It was genius. The gimmicks were genius, but getting the studio's buy-in was even more. I don't know how he did it. I'm going to put electric shocks under the seats of theaters. Can you imagine Can you imagine?
It's such a, and you don't have to do it under all the seats. You only have to do it under a couple, because once you get one or two people screaming, hey, the power of the mind, it's the madness of crowds. Suddenly they'll all start screaming.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also like people like John Waters talk about how they would go and they'd look under the seat to make sure they got one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I can imagine. He is one of your dad's biggest fans.
Yeah, he is.
John Waters. And I have a certain appreciation for Waters because I grew up in Baltimore. So yeah.
Perfect. There you go.
It all comes around.
I love John Waters. He's the nicest man. It was odd. Yeah, he was a great. Yeah, I love John. I just happened to pick up the phone in William Castle Fast and called Bruce Berman, who my sister knew, and he thought I was my sister. So I just played along.
Right.
And I said, could I come and talk to you? I think we should remake House on Haunted Hill. And he said, come on in. So I flew down. I was living up in the Bay Area. He said, I have good news. Literally, I got there 10 minutes later. I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is it's greenlit. You're making it. The bad news is you're making it with Joel Silver. I didn't know what he meant. I had no idea.
Yeah, you were back.
The most interesting part of the entire thing is now I know House on Haunted Hill is in the public domain.
Wow.
Warner's didn't even have the rights. I mean, it's in the public domain. They claim to have the rights, but they don't.
Alan, what she's saying is that it was in the public domain when Warner Brothers and
I just got.
They thought they had to buy it.
Oh my! All right, let's take a step. Thank you for wrenching my eyes open. All right, so go back and please explain that, because it went past me. I don't want to go past.
The public. What happened is there's many different libraries because it was done with a library allied artists, and then that was bought, and
Yeah.
many times. But
Oh,
no, I didn't own the rights to it either, Gil. It was literally in the public domain. Somebody just registered it incorrectly, and it fell in the public domain. And Warner Brothers didn't. I mean, they probably knew, but they didn't say anything. I mean, really, anybody out there, come on, let's do it. I want to do a prequel to it.
when we get to 1959, he drops two amazing
really well with Macabre
classic movies. Yeah, well, we get isn't it Tingler and Haunted Hill drop the same year?
House on Haunted Hill and the Tingler.
Yeah. I mean, wow, what
House on Haunted Hill? The gimmick there was emergo or emergo, however you want to pronounce it, and that's when the skeleton comes out of the vat of acid, it flies through the theater.
Yes. You know, it's funny, as I was reading some people's experiences of it, people who would just go again and again, and after a while they knew it was coming. They would be shooting at it. They would shoot
popcorn.
Yeah, things at it, which kind of,
and it was kind of this limp, kind of like stupid skeleton. It wasn't even a good skeleton.
Right.
But it was
skeleton.
But in time, this now becomes part of the audience participation in the movie.
Totally.
Which is which anticipates Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Right.
If you think about it.
Right.
Which is entirely, it's gone from what's happening on the screen and what's happening out in the audience are intensely related.
Right.
I just continue to marvel, at
and then the Tingler, it's like, what do you do with the Tingler? Well, obviously you have to, put electric shocks under the seats. I mean, isn't that just like, a no-brainer?
The Tingler was always my favorite. The Tingler I loved. I always loved the Tingler.
It's my favorite of Dad's movies.
Really?
And that's the only one that could never be remade, in my opinion, because it's perfect the way it is. It's so campy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just so campy.
I remember the first time I saw it. I remember the first time I saw it, and they throw out what the Tingler is, and I'm looking at it. I'm going, wait a minute, it's an arm. That looks like someone's arm. What is that? How could that be part of somebody?
Wait a second.
It's an arm. Why couldn't they do something bigger and better? It's an arm. I see it's an arm. How can it stick in a guy's stomach? And I just remember looking at it and watching that over and over going, didn't anybody else think of it as an arm?
Oh my gosh. It's like so stupid, but it's great. I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect to me. The Tingler and House, especially House. I thought Rob White did a great, I thought it was so well written. I mean, you can really tell that Rob White had a problem with women, but it's really well written. They're both really well written. And I thought Dick Beebe did a really good job too on House on Haunted Hill, the remake.
Yeah, I did too.
Didn't you?
Yeah, I thought he did a really good job.
Yeah.
It took a while. It took a while to get there, though. I mean, with all of these kinds of scripts, to be respectful of the original, which we were really, really concerned about, and yet make it contemporary for an audience today, was not an easy task. And we went through a lot of different imaginations about how to treat character and how to treat women and how to treat the horror in so many different ways to get to where we finally got to.
When we were shooting, I remember there wasn't really an end until somewhere in the middle. Yeah. That was another. We'll fix it with an ADR line.
Yeah, right. Well, in the sequel, we'll explain how it ended.
Your dad had an interesting relationship with Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes.
A competitive relationship. I assume that they also at
friendly. It was a friendly.
Yeah. That they would hang out.
Yeah, pretty much thought Dad thought he was just amazing. I love Hitchcock, but I mean, wasn't it Psycho where it was like, all of a sudden there's a gimmick with Psycho, you can't enter the theater if it's started.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a little back and forth.
Well,
and then Dad does Homicidal, which kind of has themes of Psycho in it, right?
But hey, if the market's saying everyone's doing the right thing, and yeah, you begin to feed off each other. That's to be expected. And in the case of Hitchcock, he's just borrowing from the best, wasn't he?
But yeah,
Your dad.
well, and Dad was borrowing from the best too with Hitchcock. I mean,
That
Hitchcock
was
his logo, right?
but there you go. I mean, why not? Yeah, why not take
Why
from
not Hitchcock and Orson Welles? I mean, they're not bad people. Straight copy,
We're still talking about your dad's oeuvre.
right?
We're still,
He died in 1977.
he is as fresh today as probably fresher. Really,
It's
it's
amazing. It's amazing to me. The reason I actually thought about House on Haunted Hill and remaking it is because I was living in New York and I would be going to these small mom and pop shops and like video shops, and I'd be like, House on Haunted Hill, top 3 video rental. I'm like, how is that possible? To me, that blew my mind.
uh obviously your dad wanted very much to direct.
Rosemary.
Said Rosemary's because that would have been a change that would have taken him into a different place career wise.
Right. But could he have done this film that Roman did? No. It would have been a very different film. I'm sure it would have been a solid, great film, but there's no way my dad would have been able to do that dream sequence that way. No way. The other thing is Roman's like ability to like work with the cinematographer as closely as he did was
as we said, your dad was a terrific rock solid nuts and bolts filmmaker. Man, he understood how to tell a story in the medium, in all the fundamentals.
Well, he read the book. He read the galleys. He got the galleys.
Yeah.
And made my mom. It was very expensive to buy the rights to that. It was Ira Levin, who was already pretty famous. And again, he said to my mom, "You have to read this because I want to mortgage the house in the morning."
I want to mortgage the house in the morning. Start reading now.
So he mortgaged the house, got the rights,
and
then went over to Paramount. And Bob Evans was like, "How the fuck did you get this, Bill? Another, over the top character. How did you get this? And made a deal, made a lot of money." But the part of it was best efforts to become that you'll be the director. Well, they weren't so great. Huh?
I hate those words.
Best
efforts.
Right. And Dad was pissed off, but then he met Roman and he really liked it. And I thought he was just brilliant. So
it's he definitely Polanski brought something quite unique to his personality.
I do have to say though, seeing a lot of I've seen so many of Polanski's films, and I might be like a little prejudiced here, but I think Dad did keep him really close to the original story, and I think that really helped. He didn't go off on weird tangents. He stuck to Ira Levin's story.
What made your dad a great producer is that he was a director.
Yeah.
There's no way a director can bullshit him because
he knows. Who
are you talking to here? Someone who doesn't know how to direct?
Right,
exactly. And because your dad understood the fundamentals, he understood what you need to get out of here.
Right.
To make the day. And your dad was a
Can you imagine?
Guy.
Can you imagine the amount of takes, and they're over budget, and Frank Sinatra's calling the house, and Blue Dorn is screaming at my dad, and Bob Evans is like, and it's like the Godfather just was up on the horizon, and it was like, oh, it's just I can't imagine the chaos.
How not to make a movie.
I can imagine the chaos. I've had chaos like that on many of the productions.
Right?
Yeah.
Insanity. I mean, I do remember Frank Sinatra calling the house and just screaming at my dad because Mia Farrow was like 21 years old.
Yeah.
She's off this movie.
Boy, it is just sometimes when the larger than life personalities smash into you,
I know, right?
And you're just trying to do your damn job.
You're just trying to do it, right?
There are a few things quite like that. In our podcast, we tell the story in Bordello of Blood of how Sylvester Stallone kind of did the same kind of thing to us with
Yeah. And you live to tell another tale.
We think we have, yes.
Yeah.
We're not sure, but we think we
Tale
have.
of the crypt.
He was you know, a terrific filmmaker. He was, by all accounts, you seem to be saying, a terrific dad too.
He's the best dad in the whole world. I mean, he literally was the best dad. I mean, he was, I couldn't have had a better childhood. I mean, I didn't know from really, I mean, he'd get calls and he'd be like, oh, I can't go there. Okay. You know, unless I can bring my kids. Can I bring my kids? So like, I do remember going to like ridiculous like Passovers with Sid Caesar and Jan Murray. And you know,
Wow.
I was, 5, but dad wouldn't go in because we were a family and the family to him was everything. So we were like a little island.
Castle was a translation of the original family name, which was Schloss.
Correct. The only person that I know from his youth was Howard Koch. Of course, he's passed away a long time ago, but they knew each other in New York.
Huh.
But like, I never knew my grandparents, obviously. I had a relationship with my aunt who was 11 years older than my dad.
Yep.
I mean, I think my grandfather was an umbrella salesman. I mean, I think he went through such hardship that I think he wanted to make it easier for everybody. Like, there's some filmmakers that are so generous with their time, and there's some that like that you have to make, because it was hard for me, it has to be hard for you. My dad was the kind that I want to make it as easy for you as possible. Like, come in, they do it, he would do whatever he could to help people find their dreams, because it was such a tough upbringing. But again, he was always sort of a daredevil. He kind of always had chutzpah. He like tried to swim the Hudson in the winter. He did stupid shit. He took some kind of drug and thought he could fly off of a roof. I don't know. He told me stuff. I don't know. I don't think Dad did LSD, but I don't know what he did. I don't think he knows what he did.
I would think that your dad in the current environment, an internet world, a podcasting world, a world where you can, a TikTok world, a YouTube world where
he would love it. He would freaking love it. He'd be an influencer.
I think that's exactly correct. Yeah, I think he would be.
But here would be the issue.
God.
I'm not sure he'd ever leave the house because he'd be watching movie after movie after movie. I mean, it'd be like, oh my God, I can watch these movies. Like that to him would have been and I'm so sorry he didn't get to see that because he loved movies so much.
Mm-hmm.
Did your dad have a favorite movie or two?
Lawrence of Arabia.
Really, Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, he did love Diabolique. But Lawrence of Arabia, I think, was one of his favorites.
What did he? I mean, of course, there's a lot to like about Lawrence, but what in particular do you think?
I think the cinematography, the scope, the story, all of it. He also loved foreign films, so I mean, he loved Amarcord.
Oh, sure. Huh. He's a
He's
Fellini fan.
Yeah, this is what he told me. This was his advice. He said, Terry, you go see the movie the first time, you cannot analyze it. You just got to go and you enjoy it. You don't look for anything. The second time, then you can look for shit. But the first time, you have to go and just enjoy.
Good advice.
He loved movies, right?
Let it wash over you.
Yeah. He loved movies.
Really was an exceptionally talented man, gone too soon.
Gone too soon. And he was the nicest, kindest person in the world. And politically, all the right stuff. He was out there working for the, those who can't help themselves.
If you were to cast someone to play him today, who would you cast?
Gil Adler.
Oh, stop drinking before we do an interview, will you please?
And on that bombshell.
Thanks for the compliment, though.
This has been an exquisite conversation, Terry. Thank you so much
Very nice to meet you.
for taking us inside your life with
Dad.
an amazing dad.
Yeah, he was just an amazing dad. Everything else was like gravy.
Great to hear that.
Happy, healthy New Year.
And a happy, healthy New Year to you. And as always, thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time. The How Not to Make a Movie podcast is executive produced by me, Alan Katz, by Gil Adler, and by Jason Stein. Our artwork was done by the amazing Jody Webster, and Jason Jody, along with Mando, are all the hosts of the fun and informative Dads from the Crypt podcast. Follow them for what my old pal the Crypt Keeper would have called terrific crypt content.